starts with the concept of God as ontologically necessary. Granted he exists, it's necessary existence, you'll see. And slides unwittingly into taking that to mean his very essence is to exist, logical necessity. Okay, let's move on to chapter 6, meditation 6. How do you feel about theistic arguments that don't work? Some of you may know the name of Bernard Ram, an evangelical theologian who wrote quite extensively on apologetics and so forth 2 years ago. Conversation with him one time, I remember he said, you know, the problem with theistic arguments may not be that there aren't any really good ones. Maybe we just haven't thought of them yet. Yeah. After all, what did people do before Anselm and Descartes thought of these arguments? You see, arguments, after all, are things that people think up. That's what you're learning to do in philosophy, to think of arguments. You see. Keep in mind that belief is not riding on the validity with which a conclusion of a syllogism follows from its premises. Belief is a much more holistic thing than that, much more rooted in the exigencies of life and thought, than just on one particular argument or a set of 2 or 3 arguments. Keep in mind as well that the scripture never implies that you can prove the existence of God, which you need to. It says very simply that the creation bears witness, the heavens declare the glory of God, nature bears witness, but leaves a great deal hinging on our openness to that witness. The idea that you can prove the existence of God with some logically knocked-down, drag-out proof would imply that everybody who doesn't believe is either incapable of following a logical argument, therefore stupid, or else so utterly willful. You see? And I don't buy that. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's that easy. Okay, let's move on to meditation 6. And here he gets finally to the existence of material bodies. And this, strange though it may have seemed at the outset, is where he finally comes to grips with the question as to whether he has a body. He's been stoking the stove in that stove-heated room all this time, not logically sure whether he has a body that needs to be kept warm. The existence of material things. Now, in coming at this, he again has to start with our states of consciousness, if you like, our ideas. And he distinguishes 3 kinds of conscious state in order to develop his argument. He distinguishes conception from imagination and sensation. And I think this is crucial. On page 53, conception, 54, imagination, 55, sensation. Now, we've already said enough about conception that you know what he means by that. Having thought objects about which certain things are necessarily true. As with mathematical objects like triangles, or an object of thought like the essence of God. Now, all that the conception of a material body does, the conception of a material body, with those spatial properties that he sees are essential to material bodies. The very nature of the concept requires that. But all that that conception of a material body with spatial properties shows is that there is nothing logically contradictory about the concept of a material body, such that it's at least logically possible that material bodies can exist. There is no logical contradiction to the existence of a material body. And so if there's no logical objection, then we can say, yes, it's logically possible, but that's all. You can't prove the existence of a material body simply from the abstract idea of matter. Well, in addition to conception, which gives us, if you like, in his sense, some innate idea of matter, there is imagination, which give us some factitious ideas about bodies. Imagination is the capacity to image in one's mind. To image a blue cat, or a fairy giraffe with butterfly wings. The capacity to image things. Yes, images of real things even. Like the image that I might bring to my mind voluntarily of my boyhood home. Something of that sort. Now, in these, there is a mental activity involved. These are not always, but often voluntary, in the sense that we deliberately formulate some image. And moreover, in imagination, there is something of an external reference involved. Yes, I'm thinking of that house up the hill, so on and so on and so forth. An external reference, a spatial reference. But even so, all that imagination does is to provide some sort of persuasion. The imaginative idea is persuasive, it has some psychological influence, but there is still no proof for the existence of the things that I imagine. But when he turns to sensation, that's a different matter. He's thinking of sensations not simply in the notion of an isolated sense datum of blueness, but more of sensation in the ordinary, common sense use of the term. When somebody literally tickles you, and you say, ah, that's quite a sensation. You see, where a physical sensation includes bodily feelings, perhaps pleasure and pain, and certainly a spatial location. If you've got a pain in your toe, you know it's in your toe, and which one? So that these sensations, you see, then, are adventitious That is to say, they come to you, they're caused by something. And they tend to be involuntary sensations. So the question he then is asking is about the cause of such clear, distinct, lively physical sensations that I experience. His point is that in these kinds of sensations, I feel my own body. You see? I feel my own body. Yes, I feel the pain in my toe. Not just a toe. My toe. It's my pain in my toe. It's not something, just an idea, an abstraction from any particular location. And so from this, there arises naturally, it's a natural judgment that we make. We are taught by nature. Okay? Nature teaches us, that's his language. Nature teaches us, by virtue of those sensations, about the existence of our own bodies. And he reasons this way. These sensations are not caused by me, they're involuntary. My mind doesn't choose to have them. They couldn't be caused by God, because if they were, he would be deceiving me, and God, being perfect, does not deceive me by the way he has constructed me. So it couldn't be caused by God. The only other alternative is that I must indeed have a body which is causing those sense experiences. So the existence of my body. Proof? Well, in the sense of a strict logical proof, no. But a justified judgment, yes. Granted that God is a perfect being who doesn't give me deceptive senses. Yeah. So the existence of my material body. But then you ask, well, what about the rest of the material world? How about that? And there, of course, it's simply a cause-effect argument. Because if things are happening to my body, such that I experience physical sensations, then there must be something to cause those things to happen to my body, and you get a causal argument. And it is by that means that he proposes how we can argue for the existence not just of other bodies than our own, but of other minds than our own. Because if we find ourselves in this situation, that in my mind I am aware of the correlation of my bodily states to my mental states, okay, then by some sort of analogy, I can see that there is going to be a correlation between somebody else's bodily states which I observe and their mental states which I don't observe. So it's an argument by analogy. You see, I have bodily sensations of my own. But my bodily sensations are in some cases caused by other bodies, the behavioral manifestations of which are analogous to my own. So where I know the kinds of mental states that correspond to my bodily states, I can then infer the kind of mental states which would correspond to other people's bodily states. So that if I stub my toe and it hurts, then I can anticipate that if I see somebody else stubbing their toe and yelping the way I yelped, that it hurts, and I'm having some knowledge of other people's mental states. So you get then his proposal for an analogical inference, an argument by analogy, to the existence of other minds. And incidentally, what Descartes started there was followed throughout the 18th century and into the 20th century, throughout the English and continental traditions. This was, until the 19th century, the standard way of arguing for the existence of other minds. And it's not until late 19th, early 20th century that you get some notion developing of some more direct awareness of other people's consciousness. So the language of people like Martin Buber about an I-thou relationship, you see, is an attempt to say, no, it's not just an analogical inference through this sort of Cartesian process, but something much more intimate by virtue of such emotional states as empathy or sympathy, okay? Which is literally feeling with, you see, a shared consciousness, or empathy, yes, feeling in somebody else's moccasins, a shared feeling, some sense of that. Okay, so this is the route he goes. Three other things arising from this that he takes up. One is the problem of error. After all, he has talked of sensations that can be taken as veridical, but aren't there also sensory illusions? Aren't there also physiologically called hallucinations, and so forth? How are we going to account for that? And if God is perfect, such that our sensing capacities that he has given us do not deceive, how come we are deceived? You see, it's back to that old question from Meditation 4, but now addressed to sense perception, rather than to abstract thought that wasn't the way it was back then. Well, a couple of factors that he throws in that you could almost predict. One is that our bodies are made up of many different parts, such that some malfunctioning due to illness or whatever of one part may cause sensations which are not telling us directly the truth. And he would account for hallucinations in that sort of way. The other thing that he throws in is that the will and the intellect are both involved. There is nothing deceptive about having a whole string of sensations, sensations 1, 2, 3, 4, of which, say, sensation 4 may prove to be untrustworthy. Now, the error only consists in our making a judgment that involves the reliability of sensation 4. So the act of judgment involves intellect in taking stock of the sensations, and will in affirming the judgment. And we err, and then you know the story, when we allow the will to make judgments beyond the extent to which the intellect is satisfied about the sensations. They must be clear and distinct. So it's basically the same kind of argument as you had in Meditation 4. All right, error. The second residual question is the big one, about the mind-body relationship. about the mind-body relationship. Because what Descartes has given to us so far is the existence of a body which is a spatially extended thing, and the existence of a mind or soul which is a thinking thing. That is to say, they are two essentially different things. By essentially we mean they have different essences. They have no essential properties in common. They're essentially different things. Somehow or other conjoined. How does that work? Now, I think it's fair to say that Descartes intended it this way. Because you remember in the preface he says he's setting out to prove the existence of the soul. If you like, he's trying to prove the existence of a kind of soul that is a substantive thing of an immaterial sort and therefore can survive death. It's capable of independent existence. And so he wants the soul to be a functionally separate thing, an essentially different thing, and a functionally separate thing. And he's got what he wanted. But the problem that engenders, obviously, is how are these two related? And Descartes' view is that both mind and body function as causes producing effects on the other. So certain mental acts can cause bodily changes, such as they did right just now when you started scribbling that down. And by the same token, certain bodily changes can produce mental states, sensations. So there is a causal interaction. Causal interaction. Well, that sounds nice, and certainly there seems to be evidence that what's going on in the mind influences what the body does and vice versa. Yeah, but how does it happen? If these are two essentially different and substantively independent entities, how can they causally interact? And what Descartes comes up with in his work on the passions and then develops in correspondence with people is that the interaction takes place in the pineal gland, which is apparently back there somewhere. And in that day of dissections trying to explore the body and its mechanisms, they couldn't see whatever function it had. And in addition, while there seem to be two of other kinds of glands, there's only one of these, which seems to indicate that it's intended to unify something. And so they click on this. Descartes did at least. How does it function, though? Because a gland is part of a body. And so it still hasn't told us anything. You see? Well, what he does is to picture the human body as containing certain canals through which the animal spirits, as they call it, go on their way. Now, this is obviously the physiology of the 16th and 17th century. It's animal spirits. Remember, the circulation of the blood was not discovered until the 17th century. Harvey, incidentally, he was a neighbour of mine. I grew up in the town of Dover in southeast England. His home was in Folkestone, 7 miles away. A statue to him on the seafront in Folkestone. And the high school in Folkestone, which was our constant competitor athletically, was the Harvey School, named after him. Harvey Grammar School. Grammar School in England is a secondary school. Presumably they don't teach grammar anywhere else. But, Harvey Grammar School. 17th century, you see. And in Descartes' day, they were thinking not in terms of circulation of the blood, but of the circulation of animal spirits, you see, which go their way through the glands. And he thought of the gland as sort of suspended into this channel through which the animal spirits go. So that the animal spirits, that is to say bodily processes, influence the gland, which somehow or other being kept connected to the brain, produces brain changes and consciousness changes. And that was the best he could do. So you get that mind-body interaction. Well, the story of Descartes' pineal gland is usually treated as one of those classic goofs, because it doesn't explain it at all. You see. And it's that which is really the major problem with this. That added to the obvious fact that while there is causal interaction between what goes on in the mind and what goes on in the body, somehow or other we are a functional unity. This mind-body causal interaction approach does not seem to explain the essential unity of the self. You see, it doesn't seem right to say I'm a mind that has a body. You see, I'm more of a psychosomatic unity. And it's that unity that is missing in Descartes. And consequently, Descartes' successors are constantly worried about this mind-body problem. What are we going to do about it? What alternatives are there? You see. Well, there was one alternative that developed largely as a result of certain Calvinists, men by the name of Geulinx, Geulinx, developed a theory known as occasionalism, which essentially said that the cause of the corresponding behaviours of mind and body is